What's up, LEGO builders? Recently, I saw one of the coolest LEGO sci-fi mocs I've ever seen. It went full Death Star on me like I was a peaceful, unassuming planet, blowing my mind and making me realize it's time to build another mech. I can feed 2 Wookiees with 1 pork today because many of you have been asking for a more all-purpose battle mech, which is exactly what I'm gonna build. So if you're ready, don't forget to open fire on that like button and let's get building. A few months ago, I got on Instagram and beheld one of the greatest sci-fi mocs I have ever seen. A massive Exoforce-themed battle mech, built by CT Perron, who said it was a redesign of the Bridgewalker set from the Exoforce line. Redesign is probably the biggest understatement of the year because this is the official set, and just look at this behemoth. I couldn't take my eyes off it. The design, the weapons, the coloration, it was all perfect. It even has hidden missile pods above the head. Are you kidding me? This lit a fire in me to create my own ultimate battle mech. I'm obviously not going to build something anywhere near this scale, but I want to use the idea of an all-purpose fighting machine. Pretty much all my mechs have specialized weapons and roles, and there's no all-purpose model that can do everything. So, now that I've shown you this unachievable standard of excellence, let's see what I can come up with. Most of my mechs have been built using these mixel joints to provide mobility. They work great for the light and medium class mechs, but this mech has got to go in a heavier weight class in order to do what I want it to. So that means I need to bring out the 2x2 ball joints. You can tell just by the noise they make when snapping together, these have much more clutch power and can support a beefier build. So with that in mind, it's time to start building. I've designed pretty much every mech from the feet up because those in the legs are the most important part. It doesn't matter how big or dangerous the weapons wielded are, if your walker can't get around or support itself, it's about as useful as a typewriter in a computer lab. These mechs need to be able to traverse battlefields and unstable terrain, so I want to make it look like every day is leg day for this guy. And for posing purposes, which I do a lot in these videos, thick wide feet are the best. I've built a couple unstable mechs in the past, and trying to pose them in videos had me crashing out like Kylo Ren during a temper tantrum. All my medium class mechs only have 2 joints in the legs, one at the hip and one at the ankle. But because I'm using the much sturdier 2x2 ball joints, I'm gonna add some extra mobility to this one. Speaking of legs, this will be the first large 2-legged mech I've ever built. So far, both my heavy and Titan class mechs have had at least 4 legs, but I feel like an all-purpose mech like this is best suited with 2. I picked heavy class over Titan class because I didn't want to make it too big. I love the Exoforce Bridgewalker, but something like that would take months to build and probably struggle in my LEGO city where the mechs are fighting because of the crowded nature of the city. Leg shape is also very important. I built this fixed 90-degree angle knee segment because I was having some problems. At first I modeled this leg after the shape of a human one, but that created a goofy looking design because we stand straight up like this, but mech legs are typically more like this in a crouched position. But that configuration with this leg design throws off the center of gravity, putting the body behind the feet and legs, making this prone to tipping over. I realized I need to start the leg going backwards, then connect that 90-degree knee piece on top, giving me a dope crouched look, but still keeping the center of balance almost directly on top of the feet and legs, making this build much sturdier and so much cooler. With that figured out, I am well on my way to success with this solid foundation. Next up is the torso. This is my standard 2-legged mech torso, and I could just blow this up to heavy class size, but I want to design something somewhat new for a change. This is probably the easiest part to design because no one's looking at a mech and going, wow, look at that torso design. It's mostly just there to connect the body to the legs, but even though it's not very eye-catching, it's still important. I try to use as many slopes and inverted slopes as I can to create a roundish shape that will flare up and over the hip joints, providing extra armor and protection to those crucial connection points. After that, I can attach the legs. One small detail I really liked on the Bridgewalker were the pistons or supports built into the legs here. Small technical details like this help make a mock feel more functional, so I'm going to add some smaller supports to mine, further connecting the torso to the legs. The back of the torso is exposed, so I built an armored plate to protect it and add more detail. This build continues to improve, but aesthetically speaking, 2 of the most important parts are up next, and those would be the head and body, which unfortunately for me is the part I'm the most uncertain of. I had this whole plan and vision for the legs and how they would look, but I hadn't given too much thought on what would be on top of that. In large part because it's kind of hard for me to picture the head without knowing what it's going to sit on first. When I'm in situations like this, I like to just sit down with my bins of parts and play around with different pieces, trying to come up with a shape I like. And the pieces I was drawn to in this case were these large quarter cylinder bricks. They give this build a broad, thick appearance and help shape a lot of the body. Almost like a pair of beefy shoulders that will be able to protect the head and arms from enemy fire. On the back, I added some dark bluish gray cylinders for some texture, and there's a chunk in the middle that's not connected to the body very well, so I pulled it out and added some brick to better attach it. I want a little air intake in the back, so I built one using some sand blue flags, and that will about do it for the body. I want to keep the head the same as all my other medium class mechs since it's piloted by the same thing in the same way. And because, gotta have that brand recognizability. I've really enjoyed building this type of head and I'm very excited for you to find out who pilots these things. Let me know in the comments who you think the pilots are. I did add one new piece, the sand blue spike sticking out behind the head, and I'm both surprised and pleased with how much of a difference that makes. The mech now looks more menacing, like some kind of robotic knight in power armor. Okay, it's about time to put the icing on the cake that is this mech. Your reward for sitting through all that building. I get to make some truly epic weapons. This is where the function of a mech is truly decided, whether it's melee combat, long-range assault, or anti-aircraft, and this mech basically needs to do all that. Starting with some cannons. I feel like those are a staple in the mech world, so I'm equipping this guy with a nasty double-barreled cannon, perfect for heavily armored targets like bunkers and tanks. A weapon this size needs to be movable, so I'm building a small arm to give it an extra range of motion. At first, I had it directly connected to the body, but that just didn't look right. Balancing the cannon out on the other side is a large minigun. I thought for a while on what would best complement a heavy cannon, and I feel like this type of bullet-fed gun would be great for smaller up-close targets and for providing suppressive fire. So while one arm is blowing up your tanks, the other is mowing down your infantry, the perfect 1-2 punch. The build is comprised of 4 rotating barrels connected to this housing. It's essentially a scaled up version of the gun on my anti-aircraft drone, so I guess if the arm can be moved fast enough, the mech could target slow moving aircraft, or it could just use this last armament. I wanted this mech to be a combination of all 3 medium class mechs, and the last one I need to represent is the Fire Wasp. It's an anti-aircraft platform particularly good at shooting down HADF Wyron gunships with its 2 heat-seeking missile pods. These missile pods will be shorter than the Fire Wasps to create a lower profile and not weigh the mech down as much, but they still pack a hefty punch. That concludes the arming of this mech, so it's time to put it all together and see if this will live up to the hype. Oh, and I almost forgot. Because the minigun is belt-fed, I need to include a bullet belt. I've found the LEGO tank treads work great in that regard, and I left a spot for the belt to feed from the body into the back of the gun housing perfectly. Before I do the big reveal, I have 3 more things to build. This mech needs a good way to be transported around the city quickly, and I thought what would be cooler than having some smallish drones attached to the mech flying it around without the need for some bulky dropship. It reminds me of Iron Man's Hulkbuster tech for some reason, but I like it. This will also help the Protectorate forces cut down on producing the larger, slower Beetle drones, since these bad boys are essentially just a jet engine with a camera and guidance system on one end. Sounds a little risky, I know, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and the Protectorate state is getting a little desperate as more and more mechs are going down. Their main advantage was the element of surprise, and now that it's gone, the HADF war machine is starting to grind them down. But this new mech could be the turning point in this war for Moenia Prime. Things were looking good for this HADF patrol. Called in to stop a strike team of Sentinel robots, they had pinned down and quickly pushed back the enemy assault. A little too quickly. Maybe it was the presence of the Cuspis 1 tank, but the enemy seemed more than eager to flee the scene. Before the HADF had a chance to regroup and secure the plateau, the hum of approaching engines flooded into everyone's comms like the rumble of an enormous beast. As the squad leaders shouted orders, a massive mech came bombing out of the sky, crashing down like a hawk among mice. Transport drones disengaged, dropping the unfamiliar mech to the ground right on top of the tank. The frantic crew fired a wild point-blank shot that ricocheted off its mighty shoulders. The mech responded by swinging around a massive double-barreled cannon that fired on the tank, blowing its turret clean off. Frantic calls for backup were sent up as soldiers fired on the mech from nearby buildings with little effect. The mech lumbered forward, trailing Sentinels, having punched a hole right through the HADF line of defense, looking like it would march all the way to the HADF main base. This could have been the end for Moenia Prime, but a Cuspis 2 tank had been camouflaged among the wreckage below the plateaus and was able to score a direct hit on the head of the behemoth, bringing it down. As HADF command reviewed the attack later on, they could only guess at the Protectorate's sudden boldness. Were they running out of resources and getting desperate, or entering the next phase of their attack? One thing was for sure, that strange mech was a near invincible force to be reckoned with, and it might be time to bring in a weapon of desperation of their own. Well, my Titan class mech has officially been dethroned as the coolest mech in my collection. This heavy class mech turned out better than I'd hoped. Its wide range of weapons enables it to combat infantry, tanks, aircraft, and even fortified positions, making it a truly all-purpose fighting machine. And I might have officially just cooked the HADF forces with this one. The legs are definitely the highlight. I had a much clearer vision of what I wanted those to look like versus the body, which kind of just came together piece by piece without me really knowing what exactly it was going to look like until it was done. It looks a little short compared to the leg, so I'd like to revisit it in the future and make some improvements. But that's a wrap for this video. Don't forget to let me know what you think of the mech in the comments, and until next time, happy building.